let's rewind. In 1939, again, The Wizard of Oz was released, still. And for the first time, we met Dorothy and her little dog, Toto. And we learned in those opening scenes that Dorothy was perhaps a little unhappy with where she was in Kansas. And she wished that she could be somewhere over the rainbow. Thank you. Bravo. And at the same time in 1939, women who made up, technical difficulties here. Oh, there, no? Excuse me just a minute. There we go. Okay. All right, there we are. So women made up 25% of the workforce. And I'm thinking that those women would like to have perhaps had some other opportunities. And they, too, might wish that they had been somewhere kind of over any other rainbow. Now, as you recall about Dorothy, Dorothy's world was turned upside down when a cyclone blew through and took her house and dumped it in the middle of Munchkin Land, in Technicolor, as you recall. And after a brief altercation with some witches, which we're not going to get into, she started down the Yellow Brick Road. So I'm going to have you, Randy. Thank you. And she started down the Yellow Brick Road to get to Oz and the Emerald City. Because Dorothy believed that if she could get to Oz, Oz held the promise of something better, right? Now, I do think we need to pause just one moment, Randy, to acknowledge that Dorothy went on an across-country hike for several days in high heels, gold, sparkly, red pumps. I just think it needs to be said. Sean and I were just talking. It's all about shoes. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Now, Dorothy also had some traveling companions. Right? Remember Dorothy's traveling companions? So we're going to see how well you remember this. Now, you will recall that the traveling companions felt like they were missing something, right? Okay, so I have some little Munchkin-sized books. So I'm going to ask you what it was that everyone was missing. And whoever I hear shout out first gets a little Munchkin-sized book here. So the Scarecrow. Courage. Brain. Randy. Tin Man. Oh, you were ready for that one. Okay, so the last one is Liar. But what you really meant to say, remember? Right? Randy, let's go back there. There you go. One more, and keep going. Now, if we go back to women, women had their own hurricane come through. Randy? And in 1960, the hurricane that was the women's movement hit. And one set of expectations for women was exchanged for another set of expectations. The 1960s was a powerful time for the women's movement. There was a lot that happened. Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique came out. The National Organization for Women started. The first edition of Ms. Magazine with Gloria Steinem as the editor was issued. This was a powerful, powerful time for the women's movement. And women were now 33% of the workforce. Women, like never before, were on the Yellow Brick Road. Because Oz, the Emerald City, and there was something better there. New opportunities, hope for new things are on the Yellow Brick Road. And for many of those women then, and for my generation of women, Wanda, it sounds like you as well, we believed that if you used your brain, that you would get to Oz. Do good work. Be professional. You'd get to Oz. You remember this little guy? He was the gatekeeper at the Emerald City, right? And he peered out that porthole, and he was astonished to see Dorothy and her companions there. I will tell you, as a woman engineer, I saw that same look of astonishment on several construction inspectors' face when they saw me standing on their construction site for the first time, right? And so many of us got to Oz, and discovered, wow, it wasn't exactly what we were thinking. Do you remember the Wizard of Oz? What did the Wizard of Oz say? I remember. Yeah? Okay, so let's all be the Wizard of Oz. Ready? I am the great and powerful Oz. Okay, one more time and really mean it this time. Okay? All right. I am the great and powerful Oz. Did you ever work with someone who believed the great and powerful Oz? I did. And I think that we recognize that culture because it's a leadership that's defined by position, power, control, and fear. And we wish, one more, that we could just change that to be a little more human and to lead, Randy, with authenticity, meaning, and balance. So let's use that as a jumping off point for where we are today. More women than ever are on the yellow brick road. Women now, since the 80s, have made up 50% of the graduating class in college. But for many women, we've discovered that that yellow brick road wasn't all it was cracked up to be, necessarily. These are the numbers. What we see today is that women are opting out of the workforce in record levels at mid-management. We have 50% who start out as college graduates, 20% of women in global parliamentary seats, 18% of women in U.S. Congress, 16% of women on corporate boards, and 4% of women as CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Wow. What is going on with that? And if you're wondering about the government, you already heard Wanda talk a little bit about this, and it sounds like Treasury is really far, far better than transportation, for example. But across government, this is what it looks like. Women make up 45% of government. You can see GS13, 40%, 39, 33, SES, 30%. You see a trend there. We're still not where our potential is. Now, one of the things that we're talking about in Women's History Month is science, technology, engineering, and math. We're talking about science and the wonderful things that science brings and that analytical brain. This is a chart that I clipped out of an article that shows the graduation rates for women in science and technology degrees. So the thing, and this is over the last 5 years. Now up at the top you can see biology, chemistry, math, and physics. And you start moving down and you see information systems starting to drop off like just a dive. Civil engineering is that blue line, that's my degree, that's hovered about the 20% rate for years now. Electrical engineering is down at the bottom. Electrical engineering has been at 10% since 1990. 1990. What's up with that? Some of the research I've been reading would tell us that the problem comes in high school. That women and girls and boys are equally capable in science and math. But girls, more so than boys, are susceptible to the coolness thing. It's not so cool to make good grades, and it's not so cool to be good in science and math. And it takes a toll. I've been reading Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, groundbreaking book. I highly recommend it. One of the things that she notes in there is that in 2011, that's 2 years ago, JCPenney was selling T-shirts for teenage girls, and the T-shirts read, "I'm too smart to do my homework, so my brother does it for me." Not helpful. Not helpful. At the same time, I forget which company it was selling the little onesies, little pull-ups, and it said, "Smart like daddy or pretty like mommy." It could have said, handsome like daddy, pretty like mommy, smart like daddy, brilliant like mommy. But that's not what we see, and that is contributing to some of these numbers that we see. So why does any of this matter? Okay, so maybe that's just the way it is. Why does it matter? Christine Lagarde, the head of the International Monetary Fund, said when women do better, economies do better. In the U.S., women control or influence more than 80% of purchasing decisions. And this from the CEO of Coca-Cola. Women are already the most dynamic and fastest growing economic force in the world today. Last one, new research. Boards that have more than one, preferably 3 women directors, do 26% better than boards with no women directors. Wow! Would you like your mutual fund to do 26% better? Sounds like a good idea to me. It's the power of harnessing all of our talents. This is an economic and a leadership and a productivity issue. So what I'm going to do now, I'm not going to focus on what's past. We're going to look at going forward. And I'm going to take a few minutes here and talk to the women. And men, I'm going to ask you to listen closely. Because then I'm going to talk to the men, and women, I'm going to ask you to listen closely. Because, see, here's the thing. We're all in this together. It's an economic issue. It's a competitive issue. And by the way, I should mention, the U.S. is behind all the other countries in the world in moving women into senior leadership positions. Which country do you think might be at first place? The economic issue. Who? Huh? No, which country? Which country? UK? No. China. China. It's an economic competitiveness issue. Okay, so let's talk about brains. So women, this is the one that I worry the least about for us. You know, you're going to show up, you're going to do your good job, know your stuff, be professional, know your brand. You have a brand that you walked in the door with. You know what it is? Lindsay Lohan has a brand. Kim Kardashian has a brand. Condoleezza Rice has a brand. Hillary Clinton has a brand. What's your brand? Are you managing it? And let's look at heart. I think it was Marjorie who said, and this is beautiful, we have to be who we are. Keep that authenticity. I've been doing a lot of reading about the skills that are going to be necessary for leaders in the future. Collaboration, listening, relationship building. These are things that women almost inherently excel at. These are the things that are making leaders of the future. Keep that with us in the workplace. Ask for work-life fit. Now, you might not get it, but for sure, if we don't ask for it, then we won't get it. In many locations, it doesn't sound like here. I mean, that's great. Men are disproportionately the ones in charge and making policy decisions. So they need to understand what this means to you. What does it mean to be able to balance your life? They need to understand that. Network with men. Women are not very good at this, and men are very good at it. We naturally gravitate and network with people we're comfortable with, right? And we're not always comfortable networking with men. And yet I have been very fortunate in my career. I've always been supported by the men who were above me. And Wanda's sitting here shaking her head. But they're not clairvoyant. I keep telling my husband he needs to be, he's not, I get it. They're not clairvoyant. They can't help if they don't know what your goals are, what you see as developmental needs. What do you want in your career? They'll help you if you communicate with them. So let's talk about now courage. Show up and speak up. We've already heard about that today too. Women, you have to do it. You have to show up in the meeting and have something to say. Have thought about it, have something to offer, or facilitate the discussion. You know, if this is what I think I've heard, let me repeat that back to you. You need to have something to say. I was talking to a senior woman just the other day. She had been in a meeting, and she was the only woman in the meeting. And she told me, she said, it was a useless meeting. There was nothing productive going on. I was just not going to participate. face. She got out of that meeting, and one of the men came up to her and said, you know, I'm really sorry that you didn't feel comfortable contributing in the meeting. It wasn't that she didn't feel comfortable. That's the way it's interpreted. Show up and speak up. Take a place at the table. Literally. I have seen this over and over again. You have conference room tables, they're too small to fit everybody. There's room around the backside edge, and women more than men will take a seat around the back edge. Sit at the table. When I was new in my position as the director of the Joint Program Office at DOT, I had part of my portfolio was the Road Weather Research Program. Now, there are a lot of parts of the government that do weather research, and many of them military. So I was the DOT's representative on an organization called SIGMASER, and I have no idea what it stands for. But I had to go to my first SIGMASER meeting to represent DOT. So I went over to wherever the building was and had a couple of my staff with me. We pushed open the doors to the conference room, and I literally took a step back. The conference room was paneled with wood. There was this massive, cherry, dark wood conference room table. And around the table were these big, high-backed leather executive chairs. And in the back, there were the little low chairs. That room was designed to communicate power. And I'll tell you, I walked in that room and I thought, whoa, you know, this is not my biggest program. We're not the biggest player in this part of the world. It's my first meeting. I'm new in the job. I'll just sit in the back this time and observe. And this is where it pays to be self-aware. I heard that. And I said, wait a minute. This room is trying to communicate power. So let's go communicate some power. So we walked around the table to the other side, long conference room table. I took a place in one of those big executive chairs right in the middle of that conference room table, facing the door, so that everyone who walked in that door saw me sitting at the table. And I don't remember what I said, but I said something. Take a place at the table. Apply for positions sooner. The research shows that men will apply for a position when they meet 60% of the requirements. Women, we wait till we meet 100%. Play by the rules. Volunteer to lead. Raise your hand. I don't care what it is. Volunteer to lead. If you hear an inkling, and you guys have a lot going on here, by the way. You know, I know you've got a lot of change, and it's more than just changing the name of the organization. So there's an opportunity there. If you hear about something going on, don't wait for it to be formally announced. Go say, hey, I'm interested in that. I'd love to lead that. It puts you squarely in the middle of the table, making the decisions, managing the meeting, collaborating, making relationships. Volunteer to lead. Now here's the deal. Remember the lion? Lion wanted courage. Lion already had courage. We want to lead? We already have the skills to lead. Look at this research from the Pew Research Center. They surveyed 8 characteristics deemed to be important for political leaders. Of the 8, 5 of them women scored better than men, 2 of them were ties, and there was 1 that men outscored women. There they are. Now men, and I know there's no lobby, so you guys have to spread the word. Okay. So for the men, what can you do? The first thing, and this is so important, is to realize that this is an economic competitiveness and leadership issue. Talk about it and talk about it like that. This is not just doing something nice for the women. This is about competitiveness, economic, productivity, and leadership. Be aware of inadvertent biases. We all have these. They are just part of who we are as humans. We all have them. Be aware of them. So I'm going to share one story with you. This is a Heidi Howard case study. Anybody heard of the Heidi Howard case study? Okay. Heidi Rosen is a real person, and Heidi's in the financial industry. Harvard did a case study about Heidi. They wrote it up, and they gave it to some students. They took the exact same case study, changed Heidi to Howard, gave the case study to some other students. Students came together and compared. They both determined that Heidi and Howard were competent. Well, that's really good, since they both did exactly that same thing. Howard was judged to be an upstanding colleague. Heidi was judged to be selfish, not someone you want to work for, and definitely not someone you want to hire. That's an inadvertent bias, and it makes a difference in leadership. Understand the source of problems. Google's the example here. Google was recently voted the best place to work. Sorry, the DOT here, my DOT, none of those, we didn't get that. Voted the best place to work. But Google monitors the happiness of their staff. They notice the same dynamic we just talked about. They have all these women who started the workforce and they start just dropping like flies mid-career. So they started collecting data to see what was going on. And it's as you would expect, women started leaving the workforce and they were having their families when their children were young and they were having child care issues. So Google went into action and they completely changed their policies around parental leave, and that's parental leave, maternity, and paternity leave for child care as well. And they discovered two things. The first thing they discovered is that they stopped the exodus of women. The second thing they discovered, they made more money. It was a productivity gain for them to keep those women in the workforce. This is an economic issue. Seek out women for committees. For all the reasons we just talked about, they might not be the most logical next choice. Seek them out. The talent pool is there. And for all of those skills, those collaboration, relationship building skills, you can't do without that anymore. Seek them out. Hard. Network with women. It's important for women to network with men. Network with women. Understand what's going on with them. Bring them into your network. Collaborate and listen. If these are the skills that are going to be critical for success in the future, and you got a whole pool here with those skills, boy, it only makes sense to use them. Expect workplace flexibility for men. This, I think, is one of the most exciting things and one of the game changers here. When I was at DOT, I had several senior men who were on my staff. They were married to professional women, and they all had young children. They expected to be home for the soccer games. They expected to alternate who was going to pick up the sick child at school today. They expected that. Yay! Look at this research. This is from the Washington Post. This was a survey of men and women in the Washington, D.C. area. 63% said that juggling work and family commitments is a significant source of stress. The next question asks about things that are important to you in work. 60% said being successful in a high-paying career is important. 70% said being respected for what you do is important. And look at the next one. 96% said that having time to spend with friends and family were important. 96%, and then check out the next one. 88% say that workforce flexibility is important to them. And look at that. It's equal to health insurance. Equal to health insurance. This is the only one that they broke out by men and women. 91% women said this. 86% of men said this. This is a game changer. We're talking about quality of life differences now. And courage. Seek out female perspectives. This is a leadership difference. I was interviewing for some of my intuitive leadership work. I was interviewing Al Sacco Jr. Al is the dean of the Texas Tech University College of Engineering, my alma mater. He's also a former astronaut. And we were talking about his leadership. And he said, you know, when I'm faced with a difficult decision, I go and I seek out perspectives from my colleagues. And, he said, I make a particular effort to seek out the perspectives of women. He said they see things differently. They have a different perception of how things are. And if I'm going to make the best leadership decision that I can make, it's in my best interest as a leader to see all facets of an issue, to seek out female perspectives. Make a place at the table. I told the women to pull up to the table, sit at the table, pull the chair out for them. Make them welcome. Make sure that you have women around the table. Make a conscious effort to develop and promote women. Now, I hear voices already saying, well, that's not fair. Not fair. See, here's the thing. Because of those historic and those inadvertent biases, if we make an effort to develop women, which is a good economic move, it will maybe bring it a little closer to imbalance. We need a better road for all of us. Anne Marie Slaughter wrote the groundbreaking article in the Atlantic Monthly about how having no workplace flexibility means you can't have it all. She said this just a couple of weeks ago. If we're going to have better choices for women, we've got to have better choices for men. And here's why. Because it is an economic imperative, it's a leadership and decision-making imperative, and it's a quality of life imperative. This is no longer a women's issue. It's going to take our collective brains, heart, and courage to make a difference and to bring about the kind of balance that we need that's going to make the country better for women and men. So back to Dorothy. Dorothy was off on that proverbial yellow brick road, and that worked pretty well for Dorothy. And you know what? If I had had a pair of magic slippers, I'd have probably worn them to the magic halls and so on. We need a new road. Now, women, before I make this last point, I want to be clear. I am not telling you to get rid of your cool shoes. Not telling you to get rid of the cool shoes. It's all about the shoes. All about the shoes. What I am suggesting is maybe it's time for a pair of red hiking boots so we can set off across country and make a new road. And men, one more. Come along with us. Let's go together. I'm Shelley Row, and I would invite you to follow me on Twitter. And thank you so much for letting me do